Welcome to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Here's your host, the Bitcoin Boomer himself, Gary Leland.
Hello. Welcome to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. I am not Gary Leland. My name is Teresa Martin, and I'm very thankful that Gary invited me to step in as guest host today. He is away, and so occasionally you will see me. And my background, I've been in Bitcoin for a couple years. I got to know Gary through a meetup in Dallas, Texas. We'd known each other for several years, and we have now become Bitcoin friends. I've helped him a little bit with BitBlock Boom. And because of Gary, I am a co-founder of the Frisco, Texas Bitcoin lunch that we do every week. Today, I wanted to tell you a little bit about one of my friends, Ryan Hill, who is from out in East Texas. And when we say East Texas, it's pretty much anything east of Dallas. But specifically, when you think of towns, you're looking at Tyler or all the way out to Longview, which is on the edge of Texas and Louisiana. Ryan comes from the area just north of Tyler, and he is a Bitcoiner, but he's also several other interesting things that would be of interest to Bitcoiners. And I want to remind you that this show, even though it's called the Bitcoin Boomer Show, is for anyone who wants to learn more about Bitcoin. You don't have to be a boomer. So please sit back and relax. We're going to learn from Ryan, who is an American handyman, which means he's a carpenter, he climbs trees, he's also a beekeeper. So if you're interested in homesteading or moving to a rural area and understanding what that might entail, if you want to hear about his faith and how that intersects with Bitcoin, this is going to be an interesting show. Our assistant here who produces the show, Stephanie, is next to me. And Stephanie, I wondered what you're most interested in learning about when you hear this conversation with Ryan.
So when I was making up Ryan's lower third, he wanted featured American Handyman, but he's also East Texas Bitcoin Alliance.
Yes.
So I'm very curious, just generally curious about that perspective of somebody who is living, the life of going into houses and making a living for his family and for himself, like how that works with Bitcoin and what made him orange-pilled, essentially.
Yeah.
So
we'll definitely talk about the East Texas Bitcoin Alliance, and you can find them also at Meetup. So we're looking forward to having this discussion with you today. But first, we have to hear a little bit from our sponsors. So give us a moment. We'll be right back with Ryan Hill. Hello. Welcome to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. I am not Gary Leland, who normally hosts this because he is the Bitcoin Boomer. I'm Teresa Martin. I will be guest hosting today's segment, and we will be speaking with Ryan Hill. He is a Bitcoiner from East Texas, and he has quite a few interesting takes to explain how people in rural areas, not in the big cities of Dallas and Austin and Houston in Texas, might be considering Bitcoin, but rather how people in rural areas are looking at Bitcoin or should be considering Bitcoin and related aspects. For example, homesteading, which is something, farming and homesteading, which is something that a lot of Bitcoiners are interested in. So I would like to welcome Ryan to the stage. Ryan, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good, Teresa. It's good to see you today.
Well, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you making the time and sharing with us some of your insights, your experiences, how you got into Bitcoin, what it's like out there, out in the East Texas piney woods. So first off, just give us a little background.
I am a Texas native. Lived here in Texas my whole life. Grew up in Greenville, Texas. Eventually married. Been married now for 17 years. Moved out here to East Texas faithfully. And due to that move, I became much more aware of the financial and fiat monetary system. I was a delegate for Ron Paul back in 2008 when I was in college. So that was a big point for me in learning about, especially the Federal Reserve System. Ron Paul was a big influence on my life, and you know how it goes. Eventually, when the orange pill showed up in 2018 for me, it was an easy pill to swallow. I had been hit pretty hard by the 2008-2009 fiasco, lost all my retirement savings, but I was young at the time, managed to get it back. Living out here in East Texas now, I have found myself with my family, have created a beautiful family in faith with my wife, Angela. We have 4 children. I work with my family's business in Gladewater, Texas. It's 271 wreckers. And then I have my side hustle, as everyone today now has to have one. I've been doing handyman work for almost 20 years now.
Oh, wow. So we'll get more into that in a second. But the 271 wreckers, that's wrecker as in wrecker service with a W.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
And the area that you work in, isn't that north of Tyler?
Yeah, so a lot of people in Texas know Highway 80 comes into Dallas, goes all the way up to Shreveport. We are right on Highway 80, north of Tyler, just west of Longview, Texas, which is also a fairly large city near Tyler.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, no, that's a beautiful area out there with lots of lakes and lots of piney woods. So it's different. It doesn't look like a lot of the Texas that I grew up in the hill country outside Austin. So how did you mentioned that moving out there to East Texas, some of that impacted your concept of fiat and money and saving for the future, things like that. So how did that journey take you into Bitcoin?
So when I was working in Greenville, Texas, my hometown, I was at a corporate job for almost 12 years. Anyone who finds themselves in that corporate setting, you kind of just find yourself in that notch, that niche, and you really get comfortable. My wife and I were pretty comfortable, didn't have kids yet. We'd go on vacations, you know. Well, God kept calling me and saying, you need to move, you need to leave. And faithfully in 2016, we found a home with some land, and we moved out here just north of Gladewater. And I had already picked up beekeeping by that time. I already had chickens by that time. So it was a transition out to this land was fairly easy, and really helped we didn't have kids yet. But the awakening really hit when we came out here, just the rural area.
So what is something that people who aren't living in the cities should know about Bitcoin, or at least it should be an impetus for them to want to do some homework and discover more about it?
What it did the awakening for me was in 2008 with Ron Paul. It was, they're going to print money. They, as in the government and the politicians, it's the only way they can keep their system running. And that one point made me quickly understand the Bitcoin white paper, Bitcoin's fundamentals, and the question when I'm asked by non-Bitcoiners is, well, you can just make more Bitcoin. Not so much, but you can make plenty of fiat. Matter of fact, I think Michael Saylor today is calling today Infinity Bitcoin Day or something like that. 8 turned on its side, divided by 21 million.
True.
Is infinity.
Right. Yeah, and I think that immutable principle, as you mentioned in the white paper. So for anybody that's new to this show, new to Gary Leland's Bitcoin Boomer podcast, may not know about the white paper, but you can find it online. That's a Satoshi Bitcoin white paper, and it explains some of the underlying principles that make Bitcoin unique and completely separate it from the concept of printing money, which we've seen a lot of in Washington, D.C. recently, and it's possible we could see some more depending on how things go in the next couple of months. So that'll be interesting to see. So what would be one thing you would encourage people to in rural areas? How are they different from cities? What is it that they would need to know different from somebody, being in a city who probably has easier access to a Bitcoin meetup or something like that? What is one way that someone in a rural setting can bring it home to themselves about their way of life and how Bitcoin intersects with that?
Technology is amazing. We have this device on our hips or in our pockets that has the capacity to disseminate and provide information at our will. That's number one. Number two is community. It's hard for an individual to maintain and keep a farm or a community or a family together if you don't have community, whether that be a church, whether that be other social settings. And for Bitcoin, especially out here in East Texas, a friend of mine, Chad Wagner, established a group called East Texas Bitcoin Alliance, and say that 10 times fast. And he set it up, and we became real good friends. Shortly after he set it up, he started some social meetups in the Tyler area. He even has a podcast that he shares on Spotify pretty often. I don't recall his handle on that, but we meet up. The East Texas Bitcoin Alliance usually meets up once or twice a year. But then there's also people who are in that group who do more regular meetups once a month, every couple of weeks. I used to meet on a regular basis with a couple of guys who were unemployed at the time. We'd meet every Wednesday morning and enjoy talks about the discussions, news of the day.
That's kind of like when you and I have gone to coffee and stuff like that over in Gladewater. We're about to come up on a break, so we'll continue this after the break. We're just going to have a word from our sponsors. And you are watching the Bitcoin Boomer Show. I'm Teresa Martin, sitting in for Gary Leland today, and we'll be back with more from the American Handyman, Ryan Hill. Welcome back. This is the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Normally you would see Gary Leland here, but I'm Teresa Martin sitting in as your guest host today while Gary is away. And I'll take this moment to remind you, if you have the time, you should take a look at bitblockboom.com. That is the longest running, consecutively run Bitcoin only conference, and it'll be taking place again for the 8th year in April. And you'll want to pick up your tickets soon because they won't be getting any cheaper as time moves on. That's again BitBlockBoom. This is a terrific conference. It's a great way to learn about Bitcoin. They have workshops. We also have great networking opportunities, dinners and things like that, as well as the day-long BitBlockBoom conference. Gary's been doing this for 8 years, and it is well respected for being an authority on Bitcoin and a place where Bitcoin maxis and people who are new to Bitcoin and just want to learn something can come. It'll be just north of Dallas and Frisco this year, so please go to the website, bitblockboom.com, check it out, and get your tickets soon. So we're going to come back to our conversation with Ryan Hill. Ryan, we spoke in the last segment a little bit about East Texas, and you mentioned meetups and things and how important community is. So on that point, one of the things that you and Chad Wagner, who you mentioned, have done out there, along with a few others, I believe Rick Coker, who's the head of Tyler, the three of you collaborated and came up with the idea that it would be good to host a little conference for interested people just to come in and meet in person. Kind of like we were just talking about BitBlockBoom. This would be an opportunity in the Tyler area to meet ask questions and learn if you're new to Bitcoin or you want to learn a Bitcoin related aspect. So how did you guys develop that, and what was your experience with the conference or the seminar that you had?
Well, don't put yourself out. You were a huge help with that. So it was, Chad had already put on 2 or 3 East Texas Bitcoin Alliance meetups, and they were pretty small. One was even affiliated with a local brew house where they played Nintendo's Super Smash Brothers. It was pretty funny. It was a good turnout though. But the one we had this past February was really, a lot of lessons were learned in people's willingness to pay for an education of some sort about Bitcoin. I think we had an attendance total of 17 or 20, somewhere around there, which, hey, better than 0. So Chad's got the drive to do the community sharing. I had some connections, and we had met up with Rick Coker with Tyler Bitcoin Meetup, and it all kind of melded together, and we've created a community out here of about a dozen folks who at some point they're willing to step up and help, lend some finances, lend some office space or so forth. And it's reaching out to people like that who have the willingness. And you have to be willing is the key.
True.
If you're not willing to learn.
I think it was a good thing to note here. I was probably more of a driver because I do the business operations side of things when I'm working with clients. And I was probably more the driver of how we should charge and how you even figure out that budget. A lot of times in the Bitcoin ecosystem, because we do champion open source, we want to keep things open and free as much as possible. And so it's important to have sponsors and underwriters and people who are willing to do that. We had someone that donated the space, which was very generous. It was a great place.
Yeah.
That worked out.
Place.
Yeah. And your connection there in Gladewater, the young lady that runs the coffee shop volunteered to get up at the crack of dawn and drive all the way down to provide coffee, which they did a wonderful job. And I think those things need to come together to provide more experiences like this, but you can't do them free. And one reason I interrupted you is just to make a point here for any other future Bitcoin communities that want to educate and provide opportunities, however big or small. It's often a question of, well, how much do you think we should charge? Well, you can't just pull that number out of thin air. That needs to come from it needs to have some basis in reality. So when you understand your cost inputs, then you can determine, in order to cover these costs, what should we charge? And then after that, you can say, I don't think my audience would be open to that, or I think our audience would be comfortable, or let's get somebody to specifically subsidize whatever we're going to charge for tickets. So I think elements of that came together for the first event. And as you said, regardless of size, someone who may be producing an event like this in their own community shouldn't be daunted by how many people may or may not attend. If you put something on and you prepare the material and you have 1 or 2 people show up, you had a mission that day that was needed, and they had a mission that day to be your audience. So I think 20 is a pretty good turnout in an area where Bitcoin is not that prevalent. It's not high on the minds of people having conversations.
Yeah. And we were coming out of the lows of last year's bear markets too.
That is true.
And on top of that, one thing, I don't know if you remember when we were trying to gift some of the attendees Bitcoin, the hash rate that day was going through the roof for some reason. I don't know exactly why, and everyone was having issues trying to gift the Bitcoin.
Would you explain that at a very high level, because one of the efforts that Gary tries to do with this show, he likes to emphasize that this is not a show for boomers. He just happens to be the Bitcoin boomer, but the show is for anyone who might want to learn more about Bitcoin. So explain what you meant there. What we were trying to do was give the attendees the experience of creating a wallet and then receiving from us, the producers of the event, a little handful of sats. But we had to be very careful with that day because the hash rate was so high. So what does that actually mean?
I like to give an example of kind of what happened. This is an example. It's not a endorsement of any kind to anyone, but what just happened with the interview between Elon Musk and Trump. Too many people trying to get through the door at once. We don't know why that day specifically. There were a lot of transactions occurring on the Bitcoin network that day, or there were miners shutting off their systems for who knows exactly what reason. The transactions eventually processed and went through, but they weren't immediate right there with the attendee. So it was a little frustrating. Here we are, we're promoting Bitcoin, and here we go. We have a little technical glitch. Hey, Zoom has the problem all the time as well.
Yeah, I think that's actually healthy sometimes to have those little lessons of, we are moving with a very forward-thinking early technology, but to have those glitches arise when someone is learning and see how we manage a way around it, or to understand why it's happening, is a learning curve as well. So I think that's important to have those. Mm-hmm. Anything else you remember from that day that was really impactful for the attendees or for you in your experience of producing the conference, the seminar?
Actually, one of the gentlemen who came from, he actually came from Fort Worth, I believe. He said, regardless of the transaction not processing immediately, he said, the group that was there that was most familiar with Bitcoin, he said, the fact that y'all are not panicking and y'all are just chill about it and calm and not worried, the transaction will go through. He said that alone kind of eased his mind and helped him understand that it is a nascent technology. It's very new. Even though the SHA-256 algorithm itself has been around for quite some time, but its application in Bitcoin itself is fairly new.
Right. We are going to take a quick break here to let you hear from our important sponsors. This is the Bitcoin Boomer Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the Bitcoin Boomer Show, and I am Teresa, sitting in for Gary. We are speaking with Ryan Hill, and as you may have heard in the opening portion of this program, he mentioned that he is an American handyman. So Ryan, I had a couple questions. What does that entail? What do you do? What can you do?
But what can I do? Jack of all trades, master of none. Sometimes, actually, most of the time, better than the master of one. You name it, I've done it all. I've climbed towers, trees, dug in the dirt, plumbing, electrical. Go ahead.
Well, how about name 3 things that you think are your greatest talents in that big realm of capabilities?
Yeah. Go-tos are definitely carpentry, tree work, which some people call it being an arborist, and landscaping, definitely.
All right. And of those, which one do you like the most?
Climbing trees, arborist. I really do enjoy getting up. I had an incident when I was in a tree years ago. It was after an ice storm. I was helping my grandmother get trees off her house, and I was about 40 feet in the air. And I had a coming to Jesus moment up there, and from that day forward, he decided he was going to, I decided I was going to have him be my harness and protect me.
Right.
So ever since then, I've been doing tree work for family, friends, church members, coworkers, you name it. I'm doing quite a lot of tree work.
Well, I may need you to come help me at my property as well, because I've got a few trees I have questions about. So, now, is that something that was passed down through your family, or did you learn it on your own, or a little bit of both?
So that was solely me. I don't have any family that has arborist or tree working skills. I picked up a chainsaw when I was 14 to help my family clear some land, and at 14, most parents won't do that. But I was given that authority and went to town, took care of a couple trees. Yeah.
That's great.
So
another thing you mentioned earlier is that you are a beekeeper.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, we have a lot of people in the Bitcoin community who, once maybe they have an initial interest in being self-sustaining, or it comes to them through their journey in Bitcoin that they want to be more independent. And so they're looking at little farms, or how do I get set up? What kind of animals do I consider? How do I go about this? So talk a little bit about how you got into beekeeping, and then tell us also, if you would, about animals that you have and any pros or cons you might have for newbies trying to escape the city and start their own farm.
Yes, definitely. I've owned a farm now for about 15 years. The beekeeping came to me as a gift from my wife. She had a coworker that was learning beekeeping, and she thought, wow, my husband would really love this. I'm not allergic to bees, which that's the number one. If you're going to get into bees, you need to confirm that you're not allergic to bees. So it fit because being an apiary beekeeper, you have to be able to know some carpentry skills, because you have to keep up with the hive boxes that the bees go in. And I had carpentry skills to begin with through my handyman work, and I built an entire. Right now I'm still using beekeeping equipment that I built 10 plus years ago. Right now I have 8 hives. I actually did an extraction yesterday from a downed tree. I cut the tree right where the hive was, and now it's here at my home. Hopefully they stick around. It's kind of a roll of the dice sometimes with these wild hives, whether they'll stay in your apiary.
And what would you recommend for Bitcoiners who are looking to move out to the country and set up a homestead or something similar?
Honestly, you need to look for adequate land, adequate water supply. For me, where I live, the land's not very conducive for growing directly in the soil. I live up on a hill that's very heavy iron ore. So my water I actually have water cisterns off of my gutters, so I'm able to collect thousands of gallons of water to help with my irrigation of what plants I have in raised beds. If you're more in a low-lying area, you have the sandy loam soil, especially out here in East Texas, that's conducive for like potatoes and so forth.
A little bit of what I have, and at least we're in a state where we can do that kind of water collection, because I know some places there's laws and regulations against collecting water that falls freely out of the sky, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
I got my 2 cents on that. We ain't going down that rabbit hole right now.
So when you were getting started, did you reach out to the ag extension in your county for any advice and help?
You're not getting any advice from a government agency. They got no clue. Merely the ag exemption through the state is for you to decrease the burden that you have on taking care of the livestock or the farm or everything it takes. For instance, I'll show you the jar of honey from recent this year.
Yeah.
Is right. There we go. So that's 1 pound, about 16 ounces of honey from my hives. And that one jar, just the materials, the lid, the glass, is $2.50. That's just the materials to get it put in there. I'm currently selling them for $15 a pound. Some people are shy of paying $15 for real honey, real local honey, which I understand because they can go to the store and buy Chinese honey for $5.
Well, that's like going to the store and getting, Franken meat. Beef that comes in from other countries, and because it passes through one element of the total process of producing packaged beef for a grocery store, they can slap a sticker on there and say it's U.S., and it's not what it puts Americans into the mindset that it is U.S. beef, and it's not. So very,
it's a lie.
Very similar.
It's a complete lie. Yeah. And to go on top of that, out here in East Texas, in Texas in general, we're blessed to be able to just pay $100-ish to get a license to go hunt animals in these woods. It's been a blessing to be able to fill our freezers with wild meat.
Do you hunt any, what did you tell me? It's not wild boar, which I grew up calling it wild boar, but you told me it is wild hogs. And the reason why we have so many of them is that the females can reproduce and multiply many times a year, and they're in abundance in East Texas. It used to just be concentrated, I think, closer to Houston, but they've really become a nuisance in a greater portion of Texas.
I think they have infiltrated every single state in the union, even Hawaii. They were introduced into Hawaii back in the 1600s, so they've been an issue. Yeah, it's one of the number one things they hunt in Hawaii right now.
Yeah, but you can't do anything with the meat, right?
Oh yes, you can. So I don't recommend hunting them in the summer. You usually have an infestation of parasites, but in the more winter time, temperatures are cooler. You don't have to rush to process your meat. That's why you cook your food. I hate to say it, but everything you eat is potentially has some type of something on it. But that's why you always cook your meat up to certain temperatures. Around here, I usually get one hog a year, and it helps add to what other meats we have.
That's great. I would love to explore that more. But we have to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. This is the Bitcoin Boomer Show, and we will be right back. Welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. And we are here today with arborist, carpenter, apiarist, Ryan Hill. I guess you just said it was an apiary, right? Is what the term would be?
Saying an apiarist is a little tough, kind of like an arborist.
Yeah.
To me, it's always been tough, but where you keep bees is considered an apiary.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah.
So you're the apiary innkeeper.
Everything.
One last thing before we close out the show, I wanted to ask you about. It's a question that comes up for some Bitcoiners if they are Christian, and I know that you and I both are. So early in my journey of doing homework around all the altcoins that were out there, when I got into this, Bitcoin and Ethereum were really big deals, especially here in Dallas, where we had Mark Cuban touting Ethereum a lot back in 2015, 16, somewhere in there. I wanted to know, is it one world money, as some people term or are worried about because of what they read in their Bibles? So I got the answers I needed to understand that Bitcoin is beneficial and can benefit people in ways that they haven't been able to do before, kind of like people who are unbanked or in impoverished countries. It gives them an access point they haven't had before to climb out of levels of poverty. So that and a couple other things that I found helped me become comfortable with the fact that it's more of an opportunity and less of a one world money. But what are some aspects where your exploration and learning about Bitcoin intersected with your deep faith?
Pretty simple. You will know them by their fruits. And when you take the technology and you apply it, is it producing good fruit or bad fruit? A tree is designed to produce a specific type of fruit that can either be good for you or bad for you. No other means. So here you have Bitcoin. If you go to anyone outside of the United States who's living in a country inundated with inflation, you don't have to explain it to them. They get it. They understand it. They try to use it. Depends on how heavy the hand of the government is over there. But here in the United States, we are in a comfort zone. We live right next door to the printer. Yet we're beginning over the past 4 years to feel what inflation really is. People are actually beginning to open their eyes and see the world's not really what it is.
True. What, how would you help other Bitcoiners kind of, well, I should say I've noticed two phenomena while being involved with Bitcoin in the last 8 or so years. Sometimes people are Christian and then they come to Bitcoin. Other times they're in Bitcoin and then all of a sudden they discover a journey into faith and they become believers. Some people have gotten baptized and things like that. What would you recommend to a Bitcoiner who's not a believer to consider about sound money and how that parallels what we know of in the Bible?
So I believe that anyone who honestly is seeking the truth will ultimately find themselves picking up a Bible. And ultimately, that's what Bitcoin has been called, truth money. The blockchain is immutable, decentralized, global, and it's upheld by a network of technology and people helping the network on a continuous basis. So it's maintaining a network of truth. So I like to refer to the Moore's law principle in that you have a compounding effect of technology. And the one thing that we haven't seen yet in recent society is the compounding and the update of the monetary system. We're still running on antiquated policies and antiquated technology when it comes to the monetary system. And Bitcoin's changing that.
Yeah. Let me ask you one question and then we'll start to wrap it up here. But this is a question Gary always asks his guests. What is Bitcoin to you?
Bitcoin is truth money. That's really how I really kind of wrap it up with a lot of people, non-Bitcoiners and people who, I've got an uncle. I've tried to gift him Bitcoin. I've sent him articles, yet he repeatedly sends back, China banned it, America's banning it, Elizabeth Warren this, SEC that, Gary Gensler this, whatever. And if you want to be a sovereign individual, you have to make the choice. And ultimately making a choice of being free, you need to have free money. A way to transfer your energy and your time without anyone else saying otherwise.
That's great. That's a good description. Thank you. Well, we're towards the end of our show. Are there any last points that you would like to make or anything else you would like to share that I haven't touched on?
One thing, love conquers all.
I love that. Well, this has been the Bitcoin Boomer Show with Ryan Hill, who is a jack of all trades, American handyman. His family has a wrecker service called 271 Wreckers out in East Texas in the Gladewater area, if I remember correctly. And anything else you would like to have our listeners remember about you? Oh, East Texas Bitcoin Alliance, of course.
Yeah, so the best places to hook up on the community side for the East Texas Bitcoin meetups is reach out to the Facebook page, East Texas Bitcoin Alliance, as well as on the app Meetup, Tyler Bitcoin Meetup group. There's about 60 or 70 folks in that, and quite a few of us meet up regularly in the Tyler area. And then I have my Facebook page. I'm always willing to discuss, talk with anyone. I enjoy evangelizing Bitcoin.
Oh, that's great. When does the Tyler group meet? Don't they meet once a month?
It's usually once a month, and I think this next one is not this coming weekend, but the following.
Oh.
Not weekend, Thursday. I believe it's Thursday evening.
Great. I try to make those occasionally, but haven't been able to get out there in quite a while. So I'm overdue. I need to go out there and visit.
Yes.
And all right. Well, thank you today. We have been talking with Ryan Hill about all things how to homestead and get started, things that you might want to consider, and how he came into the Bitcoin journey, as well as the East Texas educational events they've held. You guys have held 2 or 3, or I know you had the one in February, and there was one last year, wasn't there, in Tyler?
Chad usually puts one on every year. He has been for 4 years now, I believe.
Oh.
So pretty much ever since he moved here.
So we should be looking for one maybe next spring?
Maybe late this year, depending on how the market does. I've been chatting with Chad about it, and but if we did put one on later this year, it would be near November, December.
Oh, when it's cooler.
Yeah, nothing definitive yet.
That might impact turnout. That would be great. Keep an eye on East Texas Bitcoin Alliance. You can find them on the meetup.com page, and they should be having an event coming up here pretty soon. Ryan, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and your insights, just exploring what's going on in the farming outer-lying areas, and help people consider different ways that they can be involved in Bitcoin, and they don't have to be in a big city. There's a lot to learn, and the Bitcoin community is quite large. So thank you for sharing about how you all are working on building your community out there. Thank you for being here today. This is the Bitcoin Boomer Show, and we'll be right back after this quick message from our sponsors. Thank you again for joining us today on the Bitcoin Boomer Show. My name's Teresa, and it has been my pleasure to sit in for Gary Leland, who is the Bitcoin Boomer. In fact, that's why he named this show the Bitcoin Boomer Show, but it's for anybody that wants to learn more about Bitcoin. So please be sure to share this with your friends and help them understand a little bit more about what's going on, what Bitcoin is, and resources that they can find to learn more. Speaking of that, one of the great resources that we have happens in April of 2025. It will be the 8th annual BitBlockBoom Conference. You can find more information at bitblockboom.com. And again, that conference is happening April 3rd through the 6th of 2025. It's a great time to meet other Bitcoiners, whether you're new or a seasoned Bitcoiner, and you just want to hang out and learn more, attend workshops, go to dinners, or go to the day-long conference. That's bitblockboom.com. And when you go to that website, if you go to bitblockboom.com/books, you can also pick up a copy of Bitcoin and the American Dream. This is a book that Gary is a co-author on, along with 7 other authors, and it talks about how the principles of Bitcoin dovetail with the principles of how America was founded and our values. Also, a reminder to visit thesatscardshop.com. You can get your Sats cards at satscardshop.com. Last but not least, for Bitcoin, BitBlock Boom, we have meetups fairly often, almost monthly, and you can find those at meetup.com/BitBlockBoom. So please come out. It's great barbecue, but even better camaraderie and getting to know other Bitcoiners, learning about what they're up to. A couple plugs for me. You can find me at FlipCat LLC on Twitter. My website is flipcatconsulting.com, although I do need to do some updates, so bear with me on that. And another little venture that I started with some fellow Bitcoiners recently is called the BitcoinEditors.com. It's also on Twitter at the BTC Editors. If you were thinking about writing, whether it's on the topic of Bitcoin or something else, and you just happen to be a Bitcoiner who wants to write a book, please come see us. We would like to help you enhance that so that you hit the ground running with a really strong publication. Once again, this has been Teresa. It's been my pleasure to sit in for Gary Leland. This has been the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Thank you for watching.